Oh, I wish I had a lampshade. Let's see.
Oh, to cover up the downlight.
Yeah. Or even I have it like to the side of me here. Let's see if I can put this on its side.
There we go. So we're broadcasting to Facebook now. It's not live yet, but
let's see if this is better. It'll get a little less blown out there.
Yeah, that looks good. Okay, I've set up the cross post, so that should cross post to Samson automatically as soon as we go live now. How long have you been with Samson, Ryan?
Oh, I want to say like 5 years at this point, maybe close to 6.
Length of time so far?
Pardon?
Length of time?
Sorry,
I'm just saying it's a good length of time. It's a
period,
a long period.
Yeah. No, it's kind of like, wait a second, a whole year has passed even since we've been in lockdown. So like, I'm like, am I right with that? Is it even longer?
I know. Yeah, the whole year's just kind of disappeared into the ether, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Right. The podcast Q&A, February 18th. February 17th for you, obviously.
Tell me, what's the future like?
Oh, it's bright. The future is bright. The future is hot here right now. You're talking about snow. It was 40 degrees yesterday. That's
Wow.
centigrade. Sorry, it was. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit.
It's hot. I know that much.
Yeah, about as hot as it gets. So, yeah. So get your shorts ready for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it all looks good. So, in 2 minutes' time, I can hit go live. The Facebook I've not used. Have you done many live streams before?
We've done a couple, yeah.
Have you run them, like run the Facebook side of them?
Yeah. No, we normally do it through what's the program called? Stream Me or Stream IO? Let me take a look here for you. Ecamm. So it's
cool.
it's
yeah,
kind of like the have you used it before?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have indeed, yeah.
So it's been pretty easy with that, to be honest, but
I would have used that for this one actually, but I migrated away from Mac to PC again. But it's a great, easy to use app. It's just not available on PC, sadly.
Yeah.
This seems pretty good though. StreamYard, it's working quite well, and it's got the advantage that it's browser based, it's web based, so you can do the multicasting without needing an absolutely like pipeline of a broadband, like because it handles it on their end.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is pretty impressive. It's just like, oh yeah, I clicked the link and we're working.
Yeah, it's good. Let's hold the final judgment until we actually get finished, and it all works fine. But yeah, it's looking good so far. Yeah, the invite and stuff like that. That's the main thing, isn't it? If you can get somebody else in, if you can get a guest in, no worries, then that's the main thing. It's got this cool effect as well. I might actually use it because that's 9:29 now. Let me. You can do that. So I might go live and actually just hit that right now because that's 9:29 now.
Oh, that's great.
You ready to go?
Sure.
Perfect. So the Facebook page lags by about 20 seconds-ish. So I'm trying to account for that. Hey, folks, and welcome to this live broadcast with me, Colin Gray from The Podcast Host and Alitu, and joined by Ryan Di Petrantonio from Samson, who's a product specialist over at Samson. Thanks for joining me, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Colin.
No worries at all. I'm really excited to get this done. Actually, this is I've been looking forward to this, doing a little Q&A. I've not done one of these in a while, actually. And we were talking just offline, trying a new bit of software here as well. So hopefully this is going to work nicely to be able to answer everyone's questions. So again, just to recap, what we're going to do today, we are going to answer all of your podcasting questions, whether it's audio gear. So Ryan, as I said, is from Samson. He's one of the product specialists over there, so he knows everything there is to know about Samson mics and a load of other audio gear, and he'll be able to help us with a lot of the technical side of things, and I'm sure many of the much more wide-ranging things related to podcasting too. Is that right, Ryan? Have you got what's your general experience in podcasting? Is it all from the audio tech side, or is it besides that as well?
No, I mean mostly from the audio tech side. I mean, obviously, I'm listening to them a little bit less with not driving to work back and forth, but it's something that is part of kind of everyday life, and it's just like turning music on for me at this point. So
great stuff. Yeah, excellent. So we'll have plenty of questions. So Ryan and myself will answer plenty of questions. I am, if you've not come across me before, if you've come via the Samson channels, I'm Colin Gray. I'm the founder and managing director of the Podcast Host and Alitu. So the Podcast Host is our how to podcast resource where we publish a few blog posts every week, podcast episode videos all around how to launch, grow, and make a successful podcast. So you can pop over to thepodcasthost.com to see all that stuff. And we also run Alitu. Alitu is our podcast maker app, which is designed to make it super easy to run a podcast. It does your audio cleanup, adds your music, helps you edit your show. It's all around making your show and getting it published. So just to show you a little bit of the background behind both of us. But it'd be great to see who's online. Actually, I'm seeing a comment already. We've got Travis Kemp already saying hi on the comments from Facebook. Greetings from Amarillo in Texas. That's great. If you are in the comments, if you're popping on to watch this broadcast, it'd be great to see where you're from. Just say hello in the comments and start popping your questions in as well. If you have those questions, anything related to either podcasting, that's launch, growth, monetization, any of that stuff, or anything related to audio gear, audio quality, Hope Studios, all of that kind of stuff, pop it all there into the comments and we'll get started on that very soon. To start with, though, I had a few questions I wanted to ask you, Ryan. Is that okay?
Surely.
I'm going to take the chance to jump in and get my own questions answered first. I'm going to jump to straight to. I'm interested around Samson and podcasting. You guys really put a much more bigger focus on the space to me. Like, you guys have been sending us over so much gear in the last couple of years to review, really good quality stuff as well. I mean, we recommend the Samson Q2U mic as one of the sort of top mics to start with for the majority of podcasters. It's the best starting point, I would say. I mean, can you tell the listeners, what's your role over at Samson?
Well, I'm a brand manager, so a lot of it is kind of understanding how and where our gear gets used. So I can have conversations like this with you, someone who's familiar with podcasts, but also someone who's singing and kind of understand a lot of those differences. So, I mean, we very much appreciate you using the Q2U as the go-to mic. And honestly, your website's a resource that we use a lot of times when I'm doing things like this in person, when someone's asking me more about some of the monetization and how to plan episodes and things like that. I mean, your expertise really kind of fits a little bit better in with that one.
Great. That's great to hear. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, we talked about beforehand, you guys are putting a bit more focus on podcasting now, aren't you? Why is that? Like, what have you seen come out of our space that's made Samson as a company start to double down on our industry?
Well, I think what we try and really do is kind of have affordable gear that's accessible to a lot of people. And that kind of goes right in our wheelhouse. You know, we were making USB mics for over a decade already. And like you're saying, for the Q2U, it's a great place for podcasters to start. So we're kind of just adding to our mics and, kind of keep trying to add more things that are going to help more people in more situations.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Cool. Okay. Do you know, we've got a question in already from Travis, who said at the start, so let's jump into that at the moment. This is one of the complicated ones. Ones we quite often get. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, Ryan, but he says he's got a jazz podcast in the works. So who should he talk to regarding copyright infringement? Now, Travis, I'm going to ask for a bit more info on this. Ryan might add in some as well, but copyright is always tricky in podcasting. I'm guessing you mean on music. Can you just clarify, just pop into the comments, what type of copyright is it you're worried about? Is it that you want to play some jazz music on your podcast, or is it something related? So if you just pop that in, we'll jump into that as soon as we can. Coming back to yourself, Ryan, what plans, what would you like to see happen in jumping into podcasting as Samson has company? What do you think? Do you have any predictions over the next couple of years with podcasting, or anything you'd like to see happen in the space?
Well, I think you're going to see kind of something similar that happened in YouTube. Things are just going to get way better, way more professional, much quicker. So, the difference between watching a video from someone, even if it's the same YouTuber 10 years ago versus now, the audio quality is better, the video quality is better, everything like that. So I remember listening to some early podcasts and people were maybe using a computer mic, and now people have these dedicated setups. That's super, super common to see. I just think you're going to see kind of more polished things from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been really nice to see. Actually, the last couple of years have seen a lot more professional production houses come out. I would say, like big agencies that are really kind of taking on much more client-based shows, I guess. And there's pros and cons to that, obviously, but it's brands, it's companies coming into podcasting and investing money to create their own branded show, but working with producers that actually have the capability to create really interesting, engaging, good stories that just happen to talk about the brand as well, but actually it's great content too. Those shows, I remember thinking a few years back that there's an opportunity that they could kind of, I don't know, there'd be too many of them. They're not very interesting. They're all just marketing and sales. But it's been great to see actually a lot of those kind of shows come out that are actually really interesting, really informative, and bringing a lot more production quality to this space. Have you come across any like that?
Yeah, and to be honest, with a lot of the other companies kind of investing more, it's cool because we're seeing maybe some people from backgrounds we wouldn't have seen otherwise, and there's kind of more even specific podcasts that you can listen to. Like I found something the other day, and it's been going for a long time, but on just upright bass, in specific to a classical thing. So me as a bass player, it's a fun time, and you can really get super granular, and kind of that's what I'm hoping with some of the podcasts is that really everyone can have exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. I know it's just the ridiculously niche subjects. It's the power of podcasts. And see what I can always get somebody into it. If somebody says, "What's a podcast?" I pull out their phone. I ask them for their phone. Don't steal their phone. Open up your podcast app and say, "Right, so what are you into?" And they say something like sport, and I'm like, "No, specifically what sport?" American football. All right, okay. So what league? And then you can really delve down and show them. Look, so there's one actually about your team, and they're like, "Whoa, that's quite cool." So yeah, you can always drag them in by that, the niche stuff. Right, so yeah, Travis, Michelle, thank you for popping on. Michelle is saying, OMG, you're live. You're the reason. Oh, that's very nice. You're the reason I made a podcast. I would never have thought I could do it, but you guided me through. Thanks so much for your work. I'm so proud of what I learned through your materials. That's amazing, Michelle. It's always great to hear those kind of stories. Do you have any questions, Michelle? Tell us what stage you're at with your podcasting right now, and maybe we can give you some hints on or some advice on what you can do next, or help you to make the show more successful. I'm sure it's doing very well anyway. And Anne says, aloha from Lahaina, Maui. Amazing. I'm sure it's very nice over there right now.
That's
right, so
probably
sorry,
our halfway point between you and me.
Indeed. Yeah, right between. Yeah, I should have said at the start, I'm in Australia right now, joining Ryan in, where are you specifically, Ryan, in part of the States?
New York.
Perfect, yeah, New York City. So Maui's probably quite close to halfway between us just now. Okay, Travis has come back with saying, yes, I'm thinking about playing jazz music on the podcast. So yeah, Travis, This is tricky, and obviously I'm not a lawyer. Ryan's not a lawyer, so we can't give you complete solid advice on this. Do you have any stock answers you have for those kind of questions, Ryan, or is that something you deal with?
Not a ton, to be honest. I know there are certain things with it being for educational use. You are allowed to use certain things, but again, I'm not sure on the specifics of where to kind of clean that up or claim that or anything like that.
Yeah, totally. To be honest, that is the answer we tend to give as well. We have looked into this a lot over the last few years. Me and Matthew, who kind of write most of the content on the site, we have tried to write a music copyright article a few different times, and we've talked to a lot of people about it, and we never managed to get a solid answer on it. Like, we've talked to many people in the industry, and just about everyone you ask cannot give you a solid answer on it. It's really tricky, and it's really frustrating, actually, because as podcasters, we know we might need to pay for podcast for music, but actually the industry is just not really set up for it yet, as far as like last time I checked, and I've not looked into it in the last 6 to 12 months. So there might have been a change in that time. But last time I checked, Travis, there's no obvious, easy way to be able to play commercial music on your podcast. Um, in my experience, the fair use laws are very grey area. They are potentially fine, but again, not a lawyer, can't give you advice on this. You'd have to go and talk to a solicitor or an attorney about this. But it is potentially possible that you can use little segments of music, okay. But again, even that, I've found actually fair use is so grey area that even using just a few seconds of a song without attribution or payment can be tricky. Do you know what? I'm going to find that there was an article that came up on Pod News recently, which is a great newsletter. If you're out there listening, you want some more news on just the podcasting industry. And there was an article that came up in that very recently, which I'm going to bring up because I'll find it as we're talking, Ryan. Let me just. All right, we've got a couple of questions here. Maybe I can find it while I read one of these out to you, Ryan. Let me have a look. So we have Buana saying hello from Congo. That's amazing. Michelle has made her season 1 of the podcast. That's brilliant. So yeah, well done, Michelle. That's it's great getting to that stage. And it's a specialist needs podcast from an educator, special needs mum point of view. That's cool. Sorry, Ryan, were you going to jump in there?
Yeah, no, we're actually getting some questions on the cross post here as well. So one of them
Perfect.
that we have is more of a microphone question with the condenser versus dynamic mics. And I think this is kind of a good thing for that because we're using different types of mics right now. You've got a dynamic mic and I've got the condenser mic. So
Indeed.
for a lot of people, I mean, the big question of what mic suits best is, I mean, first off, you should just go by what you sound the best in, and you can make everything else work besides that. But with dynamic mics, they're not going to be as sensitive. So it's really good for getting the mic very close to you. And it's good for kind of eliminating some, an AC or a heater in the background, street noise, things like that, because it's really going to just focus in on what's in front of it. A condenser mic is a little bit more sensitive, and it's more if your ear hears it, you can hear it. So just with my setup, I have my panels on the wall, so it is kind of set up to be in a good sounding room. I can get away with using a condenser mic, no problem. If I was on the road, I normally grab a Q2U and do that if I was podcasting from a hotel room or something like that, where I didn't know what the case was. But that's kind of your big thing is just look at the environment around you and, base it off that.
Indeed. Yeah, that's pretty much the advice we give. That's great. Yeah, pretty much. I think most podcasters are podcasting in a generally untreated space. And it's good to have the flexibility to move around too, isn't it? So more often than not, I would say a dynamic suits quite well, doesn't it, rather than condenser? But you do get some sweet tones off a condenser sometimes, don't you, if you're in the right place?
Yeah. But I mean, it's that radio voice that people typically associate is going to be pure dynamic mic. So it's the standard for a reason.
Yeah, that's cool. We have another one from our side here, Ryan, from Anne Coolia McCoy. I was given an old. I'm not entirely sure what you mean here, Anne. You say, I was given an old airline microphone. Can I use a Samson speaker or do I need a mixer? Do you mind explaining a bit more there, Anne? What type of mic is it? And are you asking how to plug it into your computer to record? because you could possibly use you could possibly use the Samson USB mixer to plug it in if it's depending on the connection, depending on what kind of mic it is. So yeah, if you give us a bit more detail on that, we might be able to give you some good advice. Any more over there on your side, Ryan, just while I scan through ours?
I do. I've got something from a Rodney from Iowa, and he has a condenser microphone and acoustic back. I'm not sure what that one is. Condenser microphone acoustic back makes a high-pitched sound that's screeching when it gets plugged into a mixer. So a lot of times that screeching sound that people get from microphones tends to be feedback, and we call it a feedback loop. So it's basically when the microphone can hear something and it puts it to the speaker and then goes back into the mic, back into the speaker, back into the mic, and it's creating this never-ending loop. A good way to kind of get rid of that is just get rid of external things that the microphone can hear. So if the mic can hear the speaker, you either want to point it a different way. I'm using earbuds right now, and that way there's no chance of the mic hearing what's going on in the speaker because it's going straight to my ears. Kind of things like that. We're just avoiding it with the polar patterns sometimes too helps. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good advice. All right. Travis's feedback there was he said, luckily his father's an attorney, so we'll be talking about it with him. So that's good. And Travis and anyone else that was interested, I popped a link to that article from Pod News in about it. That was the best thing I've seen recently about how to use commercial music. So that's in the Facebook comments now. So you can see it there if you're interested. Okay, right, let's see. Andrea Frank, how can you best strip audio from video to repurpose content for more use? Interesting question. Do you see people doing a lot of that, Ryan, about repurposing of video channel content into audio?
I've seen some of it to varying degrees of success. I mean, sometimes when you're using audio from a video, it's the visual right in front of you, and you don't have to explain something. Whereas, oh, I have some bases behind me, turns into okay, there are however many bases and things like that. It's a little bit of a different explanation that you'd give. It's like listening to a sports game on the radio versus on TV. They're saying two totally different things because they don't have to describe the catch; you can see it.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's definitely possible, and if you have the video yourself to use something with, like it makes it pretty easy to do in most recording programs. You can import the video and then only export the audio. But that all depends on if the video is yours and easy to use like that or not.
Indeed. Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's a good thing to do. Like Ryan said, it depends a little bit on exactly how you're using the video, but often, I mean, for the YouTube channel that I run, for example, for the podcast host, a lot of the advice, it benefits from visuals to highlight things, but I tend to record everything and explain everything as I go. Partly that's I've got a background as a teacher. I started out as a university teacher, and I've always found even then, like even if you have visual aids, explaining it fully in audio, so you're not relying on the visual aids, it helps to connect the dots inside people's heads. Some people are audio listeners. Some people are audio learners. Some people are visual learners. So having both sides complete actually is really useful, even if people are watching the whole thing. But the advantage, obviously, is that it does mean that you can rip out the audio. You can use it separately really easily. In terms of tools for it, there's a few different ways you can do it. You can pull it into most DAWs. So Adobe Audition, for example, you can pull in a video and you can export the audio itself. There's quite a lot of websites out there that do it automatically. You can upload a video and convert it into an audio file. So they do it for free just for advertising. Like you have to fight your way past a whole bunch of adverts, but it does let you do it for free. And our tool, actually, Alitu, I'll mention the fact that Alitu could do that too. You can upload a video to Alitu, and we will turn it into an audio file for you and clean it up and do all the noise reduction, the leveling, all that kind of stuff. So if it's a paid tool, obviously, but if that's within your budget, Alitu would do it for you as well. That's alitu.com. Can you think of any other tools you would use for that, Ryan?
No, I mean, that kind of nailed it.
Cool. Perfect. Just to go back to that Airliner question that Anne had posted, she says it's a Samson Mini Airliner mic. I've not even heard of that one. Do you know that one, Ryan?
Yeah, the Airliner is a series of wireless mics that we do. So it depends on. Did you get any further clarification on if this was
Yeah.
for recording or?
Yeah, so she's using it to teach aerobics. So I'm going to guess, and by all means, give us some more detail, Anne. But are you looking to record your classes that you're teaching and use that as a podcast? But if that's the case, Ryan, how would she? Is that a wireless mic you would just connect up to a digital recorder or a mixer to record the results?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could go to, I mean, to do that, and if you're teaching in person at the same time, you could use one of our USB mixers, or it's not Samsung specific. You can use any brand if you have something already. But you can plug in the airline mic to the recorder and use the analog out to go to a pair of speakers in the fitness studio, and then use a USB out to go to the computer and upload it at the same time.
Excellent, good stuff. Easy as that. It's a really nice thing, actually, if you can manage something like that, and it's such a good way to make a podcast. If you can manage to create good, engaging, useful content from something you're doing already, because obviously that means you don't have to find the extra time, you don't have to find the extra motivation to do this on top of your job, and doing something like you do, where the workout is useful to people, even if it's a pre-recorded one, then that's, yeah, it sounds great. So yeah, if you can do that, that's amazing. If you had any other comments or questions around how to get that out there, how to publish, how to grow it, then just let us know. Happy to answer. You get any others over there on your Facebook page, Ryan? We've got a couple more here, but just we'll
Not
take
at the
turns
moment
if anyone
yet.
has a few.
No, Joel from Pennsylvania asked about removing some of the background humming noise while recording. Like you said, there's Alitu or a lot of DAWs that'll have plugins that'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ideally the easiest way to do it is just have your clean sound from the start. So that's something, if you're using a condenser and picking a lot of that up, maybe using a dynamic microphone, and you would just, you can avoid that step and make it even easier to get to, you know, a completed podcast in that regard.
Yeah, perfect. Well, do you know what? Let's delve into that. That's something I wanted to ask you about, and I think that'd probably be useful to everyone here. Just before I ask you that, I'm just going to read out Koi Koi's comment here. She says she's just starting. Episode 1 went out on 14th of February, Valentine's Day. Very nice. And very happy with her Samson Q2U. So she started out with the Q2U and got her episode launched. Koi Koi, congratulations. It is not a small thing to actually get your show out there into the world. So many people plan it. So many people want to do it and never do it. So well done for actually putting it out there, taking action, getting it done. Yeah, so Ryan, getting started in a home studio. So that audio quality, that's something that Matthew bangs on about as well, and over on our side, like people so often get in touch about, well, how does noise reduction work? How can I do more of that? How can I do compression to get it all sorted out? But really, you can do that stuff, but it's more about capturing as clean possible audio as you can at the start, isn't it? What are a few things people can do in their average house, their average spare room, to try and get better audio in the first place?
Something that is good is just listening to the room. The other week I was actually at a friend's house, and he kind of set up a new kind of studio space, and he did the clap here and then clapped even above kind of where we would be at standing, and it sounded way better down further because there were more things on the walls. So something as simple as, when you're starting, some people will throw a carpet up on the wall, or kind of speak into, they have those foam baffles, things like that. To, going as far as building your own sound panels like I have behind me. The name of the game is kind of just making everything quieter. If you can make things bounce off less surfaces by having them get absorbed by something, that usually helps a lot.
Good stuff. One of our favorites is just the simple quilt. How many people have recorded a podcast by getting on their bed and getting underneath the duvet, the doona, the duvet, whatever you want to call it, whatever country you're in. It gets you a bit hot after a while, but works a treat.
No,
What
it's
about?
amazing how well that works. I've even done stuff where I've recorded just sitting down next to it, and just, I know my voice isn't going to bounce off of that, and I didn't have to take a mattress and move it onto a wall and do crazy stuff like that. But it was a
Yeah,
quick and easy way to get a good sound.
yeah, for sure, for sure. One of our easiest ones, actually, I'll draw the curtain back a bit here and say this studio here. So I'm in Australia just now, as I mentioned at the start, which is a temporary move for my family and I. So we've had to build a kind of makeshift studio here. So I have the sort of simple DIY methods here is I bought a bunch of sound tiles. So you can see some sound tiles over here on the left, just spongy type sound tiles that you get on Amazon or elsewhere. And I just glued them to a big piece of cardboard, and they're stuck to the wall right there because I can't stick them to the wall because it's a rented house. And then I went to IKEA and bought, what would you call them? Movable wardrobes. It's like a stand with wheels in the bottom that you generally hang clothes on. And then bought a duvet and some sheets to put over them.
There you go.
So they are simply duvets hanging over a portable wardrobe type thing with a nicer blanket over the top to make them look a bit nicer. So even simple things like that made a huge, like you say, Ryan, that just clapping. I tried that before. This room is just solid walls with a window over there, really loud. But that just made a huge difference, absolutely. What do you think of, do you ever use or recommend the kind of sound shields as such? I've got one up here. This type of thing to go around your mic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if it's something where you know the content, sometimes people have their, where you put your screen and things like that. But especially if there's no video component, it's a great way to sound good in a space that, like you're saying, maybe doesn't belong to you. And you don't want to stick stuff on the walls.
Yeah, cool. That's good to know. Yeah, I've always liked these, actually. You're nice temporary, but you're right. If you have a video, it's not exactly ideal doing your video like this.
But even then, it's amazing. There was a different sound in your voice just with that behind you.
Just with doing that for that second, yeah, absolutely makes a difference. Yeah, because I mean, I've got a monitor. There's the little things you don't think about, isn't it? I've got the monitor in front of me. I've got a monitor right here. I've got a monitor over there, and they're hard, flat surfaces that will be causing, reverb, reflection, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, makes a difference. All right, I think we have a couple more in here. You got any on your side, Ryan?
I'm not seeing any more here. Not yet.
Okay, perfect. Nobody's wondering anything around podcasting today. Everyone's solved their problems. There's no podcasting is easy now. It's all simple.
I mean, ideally, that's what we get to. It's just something like the most compelling thing about a podcast. We can talk about all the audio, we can talk about everything, but it's really the content. If you have content that connects with people, if you have an easy way to make yourself sound clean and have your edits and everything like that, that's more than half the battle, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. You're absolutely right. Like the questions we get today compared to the questions we got 5 years ago are just a world apart. It's amazing. I mean, it used to just be 90% of stuff used to be, how do I set up my hosting? How do I plug this mic into my computer and actually record it? And how do I set up a call to record? How do I record Skype? Nobody records Skype anymore. It's just, it's a changed world.
Yeah, I mean, even just to go over some of the setups, like right now, I'm using something very simple. I've got a USB mic plugged in, kind of right off screen here. I've got a set of headphones going through to it, and it's just hooked up to the computer with a USB cable. So it's easy. I'm not sure what your setup is. Are you going USB or XLR? Or?
Same, yeah, USB right into the computer here. If I was at home in the studio, we'd have an XLR. Set up into, we've got one of the, what's the model number of the Samson mixer again?
Oh, the MXP, the 144 probably FX?
Yes, that's the one. Yep. You sent us one of those for testing a couple of years ago. And we've been using that since, actually, with a couple of good XLR mics. So yeah, that's our setup at home. But here, absolutely just a USB mic straight into the computer, and it works a treat. I've not got invisible headphones, sadly, using my big Bose. Right, we've got a couple of more questions in. That's good. Right, so Anne is asking, I have 2 huge Samson speakers and the Expedition mixer and another wireless mic, and it works great. Both my music and voice come out of the same big speakers. I have a speaker for my iPhone music. So just context, Anne was the aerobics instructor. So this is her aerobics instructing setup. So a speaker for iPhone music, and just use the Airline for talking to class from home, not recording anything. Just wondering if I need to buy another smaller mixer for home, or would another small Samson speaker work? I love their products. Nice wee compliment there, Ryan.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I
So
mean,
let me figure this out. Did you get that? Sorry, go on.
yeah, no, I think I did. But in terms of using it at home, I mean, if you want to use the same mixer, it has a USB output, you should be fine. If it's something where you want to listen back, you could either do it through the speaker, like you have it set up at your studio, or the mixers typically have headphone outputs if it's something that works a little bit better that way as well. So you have your options, and it really just is what works best for you. The setup is going to be the same. You've got it correct already, where your sound goes from the microphone to the mixer to a speaker. When we're going into a computer or making it smaller, we're using that same path, and if you use that same kind of signal path, there should be no problems.
Sounds good. Thanks for that, Ryan. That's perfect. Okay, we've got two in from one from Travis, one from Patricia. So we can go through these two. What do you think? Travis asks, what do you think is the appropriate number of episodes for a podcast season? So this is a good question, Travis. The way I always answer this is slightly unsatisfying in that there is no right answer to this. The number of episodes really depends on what the content is. But there is a way to work it. There is a way that I think you can work it out. The way I tend to do it is when Matthew and I go to plan a season of Podcraft, we'll think of the topic. So, for example, podcast equipment, to talk about something we're doing just now. So we have done a season on podcast equipment. And to break that down, what I do is I write at the top of the page, podcast equipment, and I think, right, what are the subjects in here? So we've got podcast microphones, podcast mixers, podcast recorders, maybe podcast software we might put in there as well. We've got headphones and monitoring. And then maybe we've got things like pop filters, mic stands. We've got windscreens. We've got lots of different things like that. So I start to think, right, how big is each of these subjects? So podcast microphones, that's definitely a big enough subject for an episode. Do I want to break that down? There's sub-subjects in there. I've got like dynamic mics, I've got USB mics, I've got XLR mics, I've got condenser mics. But no, I probably want to keep them all together. So that's an episode. That's one episode. Then the next one, mixers, I'll go through that the same. I would say you end up breaking it down, but I think that's probably one episode too. But then you get to things like pop filters, mic stands. I'm probably not going to talk about them for half an hour. So maybe we put them in one episode, which is accessories. So does that start to make sense? You start to think about the subjects that you're teaching as part of this season, and you just group them into something that you think, these kind of chunks that you think would take maybe half an hour to talk about, or whatever your episode length is. And I end up having, you get a feel for that quite strongly if you know the subject. So you probably can tell this quite strongly, Travis, if you know your subject. And you get a feel for it. And you end up with, I think the Mike season, we ended up with 8 episodes, which I think is a good chunk. That's 2 months of a weekly schedule. But we have gone as much as 20. So I did one around creating a website for your podcast. And it was just all these tools I wanted to talk about. And they were all interesting, useful, engaging. So I thought, well, 20 episodes, it's a long season, but do you know what? It's absolutely fine because it's covering useful stuff. There's no padding, there's no fluff here. So it's actually worth 20 episodes. On the other hand, I have done a season of 3 episodes before because there was only 3 different things to talk about. And I felt they grouped that way well. So I hope that makes sense, Travis. In a way, I know it's unsatisfying because I'm not giving you a right answer, but it depends on the content a lot. And if you do have a debate in the end over, am I going to go for 6 or 8 or 10 or 12? I mean, I do think, I don't know, it's just my OCD maybe here, Ryan, but I think of it in terms of months. So I often go from 8 to 12. 8 and 12 are my kind of defaults if I can manage it, because it means that it's either a 2 or a 3 month season if you're going weekly.
Yeah, and I mean, you have an article on this on your website where people are talking about not just the length of the season, but the length of the episode. And I think
Yes.
what you say about that is fits perfectly into this, where you don't need to take 10 minutes of great content and make it 30 minutes of average content. Or if you have an hour and 10 minutes of something that's fantastic, don't cut it down if your listeners are okay with it. So really depending on your subject matter and how Colin said, breaking it down, if it's something I'm interested in, I'll listen to 2 just the same as I'll listen to 20 or 30. So good to go either way.
Absolutely. Yeah, great stuff. Travis just followed up to say the length of each season depends on how much content you have. I would not exactly, Travis. I would say the length of each season depends on how you break down that content, because each season should be really specific. It should be answering a particular question. So that a podcast equipment one is somebody asking us, what podcast gear do I need? What gear do I need to run a podcast? What equipment do I need to run a podcast? How do I answer that question? Well, to answer that question fully, I need to talk about mics, mixers, recorders, software. Okay. And so you break it down. You take that specific subject, you break it down into all the separate questions, the separate subjects. And that then is what determines the length of the season, I would say. The other one there, Ryan, the other one we get is frequency. What do you like in terms of frequency? Weekly, daily, fortnightly?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what it is again. I mean,
it's the same answer, isn't it?
Yeah, I wish I had something better. I mean, there's some that I listen to that are once a week. Some are seasons, and again, they'll just have like a month or two on, and then an unspecified amount of time off. But yeah, I think the more important thing is just that I know it's regular, no matter what it is. So I know if I can listen to something, and it's like, oh, okay, it's Friday, it's my normal time to listen to this, or hey, it's the beginning of the month, it's my time to listen to this. I kind of slot that in my schedule. Not that anyone else cares what I'm listening to while I'm driving into work, but in my head, I know that's kind of what I follow, and I just think that's more important than anything else. It's just that it's regular.
I think absolutely. I think that is the key point. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It doesn't matter really whether you decide to go weekly, fortnightly, monthly, as long as people know what to expect. I think as long as they know what to expect, they'll stick around. I think there is an argument, and the data we've seen shows us this. The shows we've worked with have showed us this, that the more often you can do, the faster you will grow. So a weekly show will tend to grow faster than a monthly show if the quality is equivalent. If it's the same show, weekly will grow faster than the show monthly, just because you grow a bit more momentum. People hear more of you. They grow trust and they grow engagement more quickly. So, but if a weekly show is going to burn you out and mean that you stop podcasting after a month, there's no point. Because it doesn't matter if you grow slightly quicker, you're not going to grow at all because you're going to burn out. So try and do the most frequent schedule you can within the time you have. The most frequent schedule that you can sustain and still be happy doing it. That's what I tend to tell people.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that makes it easier to be happy with it too, I think, is sometimes how much of it that you're doing. You may love the topic you're talking about, but you might hate editing audio, and that'll make it a chore. So,
yes.
Again, Alitu or even friends who are producing podcasts and things like that, that's kind of where a lot of that comes into play. And just, whatever you can do to kind of focus on the story or help that story along is important, just as important as anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. All right, so Patricia Wheaton, and by the way, I should have said this earlier, but feel free to mention the name of your podcast as well. We'll give you a little shout out so we can get you some new listeners as well. So if you want to pop your podcast in, if you're asking a question, by all means do that. But Patricia asks, can you talk a little bit about monetizing podcasts besides coaching? So rather than coaching, talk a little bit about monetizing. Have you any experience with that, Ryan? Is that something you deal with?
I don't, to be honest. This is going to be your expertise right here.
No worries, still. Okay, so most common, the one people always talk about is sponsorship. So sponsorship is a decent way to monetize, but it does require you to have a decent level of audience. You'd only tend to be able to get sponsorship at the kind of maybe 2,000-3,000 downloads per episode mark. So as soon as you have 2,000-3,000 regular listeners, you can start to look at sponsorship, and you'll tend to earn something in the region of $40-ish per episode if you sell out both pre-rolls and mid-rolls and maybe even post-rolls as well. That just means the slots you actually talk about the sponsors. So sponsorship is a decent one to look at, and I can pop some links in the chat about this so you can follow up on it. But this just give you a little kind of summary of them all just now. The other one that works earlier is affiliate marketing. So affiliate is almost like sponsorship, but you go and sign up for an affiliate program, like Amazon, for example. You find a few products that you like that suit your audience, and then you talk about them in the show, and you try and encourage people to buy them. And if it's products that you genuinely like, and your products and your audience will genuinely find useful, then often you can get some affiliate commission through that as well. So it's kind of like choosing your own sponsor, and then going out and just kind of selling their products. And the amount you earn depends on how convincing you are in terms of how valuable that product is. So affiliate marketing can work quite well too. The one people often graduate up to over time is, as you've said, coaching. So services, selling services, because podcasting is great for earning that trust, earning engagement. People get to know you and trust you and like you, and therefore they'll pay for your stuff. So services work well, but products as well. So even just coming up with a physical product that suits your audience. Talk to your audience, ask them what problems they have, try and figure out if there's something you could do to solve that problem for them through a physical product, or perhaps a digital product. So Alitu, our podcast maker app, that came out of our audience's problems. We talked to people over the years, editing, production, noise reduction, leveling, all those techie bits. A lot of people don't enjoy that stuff. A lot of people can't think of anything worse than going into Audacity or Audition and figuring out how to level out their volumes, how to figure out their noise reduction, how to compress their audio, all that stuff. And so we built Alitu based on that. So that was a product we built to monetize both our podcast audience and our blog audience as well. So that one works really well too. But there's obviously a fair bit more investment in that. Although some digital products are easy, like ebooks or courses. And probably the only other obvious one or big one is the kind of donations side of things. So Patreon, for example. Patreon works really well for some podcasters. Not all, but some. There's some really good stories out there of people who've made Patreon work really well. And the ones that I've seen work really well tend to put a bit of creativity into it. They don't just throw up a Patreon wall and say, pay $5 a month just to support our show. They give some really nice, interesting bonuses. You have the tiers there. Things like even as simple as getting a shout out on the show every week, or maybe you subscribe to a certain tier and you get your question answered on the show, or you subscribe to a certain tier and suddenly an audio drama will include you as a character on their show, something like that. So putting a bit of creativity into the Patreon can work quite well too. So I hope that gives a wee kind of summary. Anything jump out at you there, Ryan? Anything you've seen work well in the past for other shows that you listen to?
With some of the Patreon things that you're mentioning, I've seen people have extended versions of shows. So like you can get the main gist of the topic on like a free site, and then you can jump behind the paywall and get some extra, some deeper diving, which is good just for your audience too, because again, if it's something that someone's interested in, obviously they want to go forward and kind of run down the rabbit hole with you, whether they're talking about something super specific that maybe isn't as as great to gain audience members. Maybe they'll get into it more afterwards.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, no, it's a great one actually. Yeah, totally. Premium content, like giving them just a bit extra for the Patreons or for the donators or for the members. It's a really good one. Yeah, definitely. Okay, right. We've got Michelle here, Michelle Hayes. So Michelle is asking, what is the most effective way to share a podcast on social, essentially on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube? Would you share a website link or the podcast on iTunes or a specific episode? That's a really good question. Other tips to get my podcast rolling out. So would you share the link to your podcast website, or would you share the link to iTunes, or would you share a specific episode? What do you think, Ryan? What jumps out?
I mean, personally, I would think that you would kind of direct people to where they can listen to things at first, because your storytelling is what's engaging. So I would think if you can get them to start listening to your storytelling, that's half the battle right there. So whether it's a link to it, even I've seen people put a couple links where they have the iTunes and Spotify and whatever else they're using. I'd probably put that kind of further up front, and then maybe your website would be kind of the second tier of information that people can access, because again, you're kind of selling yourself there. So why not let them do it with something that you've already edited and produced and had all the backing info on?
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I like the approach of creating a good landing page for your show and just having that as the one place you send everywhere. Sorry, the one place you send everyone to. And an example of this is if you go to Podcraft, so podcraft.net, podcraft.net is our landing page for Podcraft. It's not perfect by any means, but the key features are it is a page on our own website. So it brings people to our kind of home base. It has the artwork there to catch the eye straight away. It has a title, which is designed to tell people what the show is about and who it'll help right away. And then it's got a little paragraph that gives a bit more detail. So you've got that kind of like attention grabbing part, like immediately tell people this show is for you, what problem it solves. And then if they really want to read it, they can read that paragraph to get a bit more detail on the subjects it covers. And the important part here is as well, it has 2 or 3 subscribe links below that. So it has a subscribe link that then links people straight to iTunes. So you asked this, Michelle, would you link to iTunes? I would not link direct to iTunes because there's a huge proportion of podcast listeners out there that don't have Apple devices. They listen on a different place. So if you link to iTunes specifically, you're missing out on the chance that they're going to have to jump through hoops to subscribe and they might not bother. But if you have this landing page with an iTunes subscribe link, a Google Podcast subscribe link, and potentially a Spotify one as well, then that covers 99% of podcast listeners. So that's what I would do. And certainly go over, excuse me, you can go over and check that landing page if you want a little example of how that looks. A little bit of icing that I love as well is if you can have like a pinned episode just below that, it's really good. If somebody can just hit play right away, they see the description, they see the subscribe links, but they've got a play button there so they can listen to it. Maybe it's the trailer, or maybe it's an episode that you know is good. Then that can work really well. I like that, and it lets them listen just to make sure they want to subscribe. Does that make sense, Ryan?
No, absolutely. Like you're saying, I think the easier you make it for people, the better. In terms of just being able to reach it on their platform and what they listen to on, it keeps it clean.
Indeed. What's there? Michelle asked generally there as well. Any other tips to get our podcast rolling out? How did you find? Do you remember this? The how you found the last few podcasts that you listened to? Like, how do you generally find podcasts?
Oh, I'm trying to think. A lot of it's just word of mouth. Is people talking about it. A couple things were I listened to one R2C2, which is CC Sabathia from the pitcher from the New York Yankees, and Ryan Ruocco, an announcer. And a lot of that was just I read a news article that was quoting what they said after a game one day. So a lot of it is just kind of knowing what sources that people are into it to begin with. The bass podcast I was talking about earlier was watching YouTube videos about bass players, and it kind of fit right in there. So it's just knowing where your audience lives.
Absolutely. I love that. Actually, the old maxim of doing unscalable things that is kind of in the startup world, but I think it applies so much to podcasting, is unscalable things work so well for podcasts. Things that would never work for blogging or video. Things like going to events, like going to an event. Like what I mean by this is that one podcast listener tends to be worth 100 blog readers or 1,000 video watchers, because they tend to be so much more likely to take action. They tend to be so much more loyal because podcasting is such a much more deep medium. It takes more time to listen to. People grow more trust around it. So if you can go out there and attend an event that your people hang out at, find that topic, get on meetup.com or Eventbrite and find something related to your topic. Go along to it. Even if you can only talk to 3 or 4 people at that event and convince those 3 or 4 people to listen to your show, it might only seem like 3 or 4 people. But like you just said there, Ryan, word of mouth is huge in podcasting because of the barriers to listen. People so much more often listen to a show just because somebody convinced them to. They built that trust. And so those 3 or 4 people will expand into another 3 or 4 per person, and then it expands exponentially out from there. So I think those kind of more unscalable approaches, like attending events or running an event or like trying to get some PR or something like that, it generally takes quite a lot of time to do. It just makes a big difference. So I like that.
Yeah. I have another
Righty.
question over here, Colin.
Oh yeah, go for it. Go for it.
From Kevin. He's asking what to use for cameras and components to do live shows to play music with bands that can't get together due to the pandemic. And this is a harder one because I play in a band myself, but a lot of what we're fighting is just internet speed and kind of audio speed. Because to play live, I mean, I know when we've tried it to pass ideas back and forth, it's usually one person goes, then the next person. A lot of the live content I've seen from bands typically has been when people can get tested and get together, even loosely, kind of distance in a place or even better outside. But I haven't really seen too many successful things where people are pulling in four different sources, kind of blending them into one, just due to internet speeds and latency on audio gear. Um, it's pretty natural. Like right now, I can hear myself speak, and I'm not hearing any delay. But to do that and have it travel down the street to my drummer's house, it's usually kind of hard to play along with. I don't know if you've
I'd
had any
imagine,
experience with it.
yeah. No, not at all. Not at all. That's interesting to hear, actually. But yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, even just a half-second delay must make a huge difference if you're playing music.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
the biggest thing I've seen is people just taking one person's track and just building off of that, or having one member kind of go over the other member's stuff and doing that live with the audio behind
Mm.
them. But to do all four from one source, I haven't seen it happen very well. And I might have just not seen it, but I haven't seen it happen really effectively without kind of being in the same general location.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see any tech coming up, like being developed just now, that might solve that type of thing, that might make that easier?
I know there are a lot of apps that are really good for collaborating and throwing ideas back and forth specifically, um, but I'm not sure about the speed. Like, I mean, if you guys are all wired, via Ethernet and have gigabit speed, it's definitely something that go ahead and try it.
Mm.
I don't have that, so I haven't had any
Yeah,
experience with it.
yeah. Most people don't. Cool. That's interesting. That's, yeah, a different application. Patricia, I'll just mention Patricia did pop her podcast in. So she says her podcast is Whiskey Wishes and Bourbon Dishes, which sounds delicious. I'm going to have to, it's only 10 a.m. in the morning here, so I probably can't go and have a bourbon, but put me in the mood
Oh,
for it this evening, maybe.
we're getting close to happy hour here in New York, so it's just about
Oh, I
time.
bet you are. Cool. I've got one more from. So 10 minutes that we're nearly on the hour. That's 20 past for me just now. So we've got about another 8 minutes or so. So if you do have any more questions, please do pop them into the chat, whether you're on our Facebook page on the podcast host or whether you're on the Samson Facebook page, just pop them in. We'll answer them in the next 5 or so minutes. I've got one more here, though, from Sandy Rosenthal. So she says, I haven't launched yet. Would you recommend that I release multiple episodes when I release my first episode? Perhaps 3 or 4. What's your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I wouldn't. I don't know if that makes sense to do. I mean, you would know a little bit more on this one than me, Colin. But I would think having those 3 or 4 episodes ready to launch would just kind of let you keep a consistent schedule, and I think keeping up on that would be pretty important. So that if there ever is a delay, something that you can help or can't help, you have an extra week to get back or an extra month to get back for your next episode. I think as long as you're
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
out something that is, good content, you don't have to give people 4 good things at once. You can just kind of space them out nicely.
Yeah, for sure. There's 2 approaches to this. One is exactly what you're saying there, Ryan. There's a really good argument for building up a buffer of 3 or 4. So yeah, I totally agree with that. It's because, like you said earlier, I think consistency, regularity is one of the key things. One of the best ways to grow your podcast is simply to do it every week or every fortnight or every month, whatever you choose. But if you do it regularly like that, it will grow. It will grow. But the other approach, and I have seen it work well, is if you can put out even just 2 or 3 episodes at the start, there's a little boost you can get, I believe, and that we've seen in the past from if you put it out, somebody listens to the one episode and there's more there. So they can go, oh, I like that. Can I listen to someone right away? And then they listen to that one too. And then maybe they go, oh, a third one. I'm going to listen to that one as well. And it kind of, I've found it can hook people in. And we've had a bit of anecdotal evidence around this as well. It can hook people in a little bit more than just having one there, and maybe puts you a bit more front of mind for when the next one comes out the following week. But on the other hand, it does make launch more difficult, because it means that you've got to create 4 things ahead of time. And the last thing you want to do is to make launching your show more difficult, because there's already tons of stuff to think about. And I've seen too many people put off their show for months and months and months, because they think they have to create 4 to put in the can and then another 4 to put out at the start, so they've got that buffer plus like a few to put out at the start of the show. So it can be too much work. And in fact, most of the time, the best thing you can do is just record an episode, put it out there, and just keep going. Because that commitment, that's once it's out in the world, that's the big thing. That's the big step. Once you've done that, that's, you're rolling. Okay. I've got one more. Patricia says it's 5 o'clock somewhere. That is true. That is true. Wayne Knowlton just mentioned plug and play camera. Oh, so he's got there's a camera. Apparently, the Q2N camera from Zoom apparently is good for entertainers. Okay. Right, I don't have any more on my side. Ryan, you got any more before we finish up on your page?
Let me check here. I don't believe so. We have a pretty bass guitar specific one, but we can answer that offline.
Okay, no worries at all. All right, that's been really fun, actually, Ryan. I think we got a bunch of questions in there. It's been good fun answering them, and I think you have some great answers from yourself. Hopefully, we've helped out a few podcasters here. We've helped solve a few problems, and it's been great to spend a bit of time with you as well. First time we've met, I think. So it's been good to hear a bit more from the Samson side and get to know somebody in the team.
No, thanks again for having us here. I mean, we use your website as a how-to for a lot of people when they're not asking the technical questions we can answer. So it's nice to finally have a face to put with it.
Indeed. What would you point people to? So I find a little bit of advice. If there's people out there, they're just looking to upgrade their gear a little bit, they're looking to take the next step, or maybe even they're just starting. What do you think is the path through the Samson product line? Where should they start, and then where would you upgrade to as they want to maybe get a bit more pro?
I mean, I think your big thing is going to be starting with your microphone, like step 1, just go from there. Kind of go again with what fits your needs, and then it's going to be kind of some accessories after that. Having a pop filter to get rid of plosive noises, using kind of a good set of headphones, and then for when you're mixing later on, having a decent set of speakers, and then say you want to have multiple people on, then you're looking at some stands and multiple microphones and mixers, and it really very much depends on what you want to do, but the place to start for everyone, I think, is a good microphone and a good set of headphones.
Yep. And like we said earlier, I definitely recommend the Samson Q2U. What's the next step up from the Q2U? Would you say, if somebody does decide they want to get something a bit more, depth, something like that? Like what would you say is the next step up?
So I mean, after the Q2U, we have we're coming out with the Q9U, which should hopefully be out relatively shortly, which is going to be a bigger style dynamic mic. Currently, I'm using the G-Track Pro, and kind of give you the clue in here.
Oh yeah.
And I use this for my music lessons and teachings, and this is going to be a real big condenser mic that works very well. But I mean, a lot of people, what they find out is that them kind of going further in their podcast doesn't mean necessarily that they're hunkering down in the studio. So again, like we have the Samson satellite mic, which will plug directly into an iPhone. So a lot of times for an interview, it's really easy to take one cable, plug your phone in, and then have a mic that can work for 2 people. So I think your biggest thing for upgrading is really just learning what you're doing as the podcast grows. If you start leaning more toward interviews, you're going to need maybe a figure 8 microphone that can record in front and back, so you can put the microphone in between each other. And a lot of mics will have kind of those different settings built into the mic, but just simple stuff like that, I think, is going to be what kind of necessitates you growing or upgrading gear more so than anything else.
Yeah, perfect. Great stuff. Yeah, if you want to check out the Samson range, go over to samsontech.com. And if you do want any more help with your show, obviously, I'd love it if you could check out The Podcast Host. That's thepodcasthost.com. And you'll find all the categories, everything you want to know about launching your show. We've got a huge how to start guide. We've got a full guide on how to grow your show, everything you need to know about gear, reviews of all the Samson gear and any other gear as well, and all around monetization as well. So anything you need to know about podcasting, nip over to thepodcasthost.com. And our other side as well is Alitu. Alitu is our podcast maker app. It's a web app that cleans up your audio, does all the noise reduction, all the compression, all the leveling of your volume, all that stuff, takes care of all that tech side, and it'll help you edit as well. We've got a custom-made podcast editor in there too. It pieces together all the different bits, puts your music in, does all the fades, and can publish direct to nearly all of the podcast hosting platforms out there too. So that's over at alitu.com, alitu.com. All right. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. I hope it's been useful to you. I hope you've had fun. Thank you for joining me, Ryan. Thanks for all your advice.
No, thanks, Colin. Thanks again for being here, and thank you everyone for the questions.
Perfect. All right. We'll talk to you soon, folks. Cheerio. Okay. That's us offline. Live video has ended. Yes, definitely offline.
I was like, pause.
Yeah, exactly. You got to make sure. You got to do a double check.
Yeah,
cool. Thanks, Ryan. That was really good.
No, I appreciate you having me. And again, I didn't mean to step on any answers if I was talking out of turn there, but I think you.
Oh, no, not at all.
Nicely.
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, I should have said at the start to jump in more actually, because I end up just speaking too much about anything. So, but yeah, no, I think that worked. I think that worked really well. I think that was good. Hopefully, people would. I meant to. There was one question popped up from Travis that I meant to answer, but I forgot. Maybe I can still answer here. Yeah, I can. Cool. I'll write him an answer after.
Yeah, we got lucky. There was one guy at the end, even on the Samson thing, who sorry, I'm reading the comment here. Was just like, oh yeah, this was great. This was fantastic. I was like, oh, cool. Okay, that's a good sign then.
Yeah, no, we've had some really good comments in here, actually. I'm going to go through and reply to a few of them. But yeah, it was really good feedback. So yeah, hopefully that worked well for both sides. Yeah, good stuff. All right. Cool. Is that the end of your day now?
Yes, sir.
Go and enjoy that happy hour that we talked about.
I was going to say, I got to check out that podcast now.
Cool. Okay, I'm sure I'll talk to you again sometimes, Ryan. Hopefully catch up.
Absolutely. I'll shoot you a message too on WhatsApp now, so you have my number just in case you need anything in the future.
Great, excellent. Maybe there'll even be a live event at some point in the not too distant future.
Fingers crossed. How are you guys doing with quarantine down in Australia at the moment?
To be honest, I keep having to remind myself how lucky we are, because Australia is probably one of the best situations at the moment in the world. Like it's relatively normal. Okay. There's very few cases. There's kind of the quarantines pop up every now and again, or sorry, lockdowns, I should say, because they're really strict about it. Like even if you get 5 or 10 cases in a location or a city, they'll lock down the city for a few days. But okay. Yeah, it's good at the moment, thankfully. Okay. Which is better than home. We're lucky not to be in the UK right now because they're in a huge lockdown. Yeah. So, what about yourself?
I don't know if we're as strict as the UK is at the moment. I know we were for a long time, but within the last week or two, things have been easing up. So, things are starting to open up a little bit later. People can do kind of partial indoor dining in most places again at this point.
Yeah,
but
that's good. Aye.
So it's just been snowstorms and all through the south and now the East Coast. That's kind of been shutting everything down anyway. So
yeah,
just another reason to stay inside.
Yeah, totally. Winter was always going to be tough, wasn't it? Like having to deal with this stuff plus winter is not fun. But spring's around the corner.
Well, we're getting there. You're getting out of it, but
true. Cool. Okay, cheers, Ryan. Enjoy your evening when it comes.
Thanks, Colin.
Talk to you later.
Later.